near the edges, and on the very outside you'd have your agricultural belt to ensure that each city has its most basic needs met at a very, very local scale. Here's a list of all of the ecological sector entities that would exist: land use management, urban design, all the way down to the monitoring centers. Constructive sector entities would include management centers in water systems, electrical systems, etc. Social sector would be safety, welfare, music, literary centers, fashion centers, restaurants. And education, same. Materials sector would be all of our factories, more materials processing specifically. These are all extra urban entities, meaning that they would occur outside of cities. They would not be inside. So all of our monitoring centers, restoration centers would be outside in the wilderness. Constructive sector entities are all of our factories for our manufactured goods, and so on. Here's the database and interface. The database is a universal library of all of our human knowledge, very similar to Wikipedia. It organizes our information into sciences and humanities, and all of the information we gather can help to optimize our efficiency of society and industry, and therefore it continually updates the system structure. Here's my proposal how to organize all information into a very simple hierarchy. The interface provides access to the entire socio-industrial complex because it's an open society, free access. Everybody can request information, request services, request goods, inquire about any information, communicate with others, and record new information so that the information can be applied quickly. Here's an example of how the interface might work. If I wanted to inquire about a position in my field, urban planning, this is how it might look. I would, of course, be in the planning division, and within the planning division, specifically urban design. I would like to know what current projects are going on, because everything would be project-based in the society. There's no daily jobs where people slave away for 8 hours a day. So new projects. I'd like to be nearby. And I'd like to pick the most current projects, because I don't want to wait too long, because I feel like I need to do something. So perhaps in region 20.2, Conservation 122, might have a nicer name than that, but this is the designation for industrial purposes. I'd like to see what positions are available there, because it happens to be perhaps northern Florida or central Florida. There is one position available, a urban design analyst, so I'll pick that position. I already know what the requisites are, so I'd like to apply for it immediately. Okay, first come, first served. So I have successfully registered with 20.2.122. And my project starts in 41.3 days, so I have a little vacation before my next project. I could move, but I can do that later. And on my desktop I might have a reminder for all my current projects or upcoming projects. And that was an example of making an inquiry. The production cycle would be very different, of course, since its main goal is to preserve our resources indefinitely. So here is from the earth and back. You'd have the provision sequence, construction, distribution, consumption, reclamation, deconstruction, and then recovery. Provision sequence provides all the necessary raw materials for the subsequent construction sequence. During the construction sequence, all of the raw materials are then combined into completed projects or products, which can then move on to distribution. During distribution, the products are relocated from manufacturing centers to distribution centers. And then from the distribution center, they can go to individuals or groups, depending on what the product is. Once the product is consumed, it goes from consumers back to the reclamation center, which is similar to a recycling center. The deconstruction sequence involves the deconstruction of those products into simpler components, and then down into base materials for future use. The recovery sequence involves the recovery of those raw materials, which can then be provided in place of new materials, so that the materials can be used as often as possible, so new materials do not have to be extracted. Resource accounting is very important to that production cycle, because it's a method of tracking resources through the use of a system of modular reference numbers which record the materials and processes along the course of the production cycle. So both materials and processes are recorded, and the materials are quantified in moles, meaning that we know the exact number of molecules in each product. And the processes are designated by a subdivision code, so that you know where the product came from and where it needs to go when it is recycled. Here's an example of one of those codes. In Region 12, Section 3.2, in the instrument subdivision, we have medical devices, specifically acoustic devices, and those devices used for auscultation, which is a simple stethoscope. If you would expand that further, you'd have the modules of the stethoscope, the chest piece, the binaural shaft, flex tubing, and earpieces. And these are modules, so they have an extra number, because not only they're stethoscope, but they are components of the stethoscope. And then you might break that down even further into the modular components, which are the base materials, aluminum, PVC, synthetic rubber, etc. And you'd actually be able to see how many moles are in each of those products. So you'd know exactly how many molecules in total there are in a stethoscope, and where each of those materials came from. This way, regions can keep an accurate accounting of materials, and also, if there is a poor quality material, you'd be able to identify where it originated. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, wouldn't you need a, like some sort of, I guess, scale with a really big amount of significant figures to be able to measure, like, exactly how many molecules?
No, because every material has a molecular weight, and you'd be able to measure in kilograms to get the moles.
You use its molar mass.
Yeah, I know, but to get it exact, you need to, like,
Well,
you need to measure it to, like, maybe 10 significant figures.
right, and since all the products are modular and virtually identical because of the mass production involved, we could take the time to measure that and make sure that all these products have an exact molecular number. You know, every single product would be pretty much identical, so it would be fairly accurate. Conceptual certification would be the replacement for an education system. It's a system by which individuals self-assess their understanding of various concepts. It also sets requisites for educational fulfillment in order to continually increase the standard of performance for all members of society. The concepts are identified and designated using a modular organizational structure, so that a person can access these modules, and using each modular resource archive and assessment methodology, they can self-assess. So then each concept is represented as it relates to others. So there's a network of all the knowledge and how it relates to one another in a giant universal concept map. And the interconnected nature of the concept map encourages intellectual knowledge to span many areas. A person accessing modules will be able to identify the preferred means of presentation as well. So if you're a visual learner, all the modules will present themselves visually. Or if you're not, it'll be presented, audibly. And also the same goes for self-assessment. If you have a preferred means of self-assessment, all modules will be self-assessed the same way. Over time, the modules can become customized to fit the learning style of the student, just as those programs on the computer can determine what style of music you most like, and then select songs that you might like according to your preferences, and get more and more accurate over time by your selections. This can make the modules more simpler for you to understand, and the self-assessment can also become more comfortable for the students, the same way that those programs work. And each module passed